Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to briefly let everyone know that who's on the call right now that this will be recorded. We will be giving about 4 extra minutes for people to trickle in, and we'll start at 5:04 or 5:05, better yet. Excellent. Good evening, everyone. Stephanie Martin Tom here, as I've been here through this entire experience with everybody, and I thank everybody again for being here today. We are going to begin. I just want to note that this is recorded, so everybody is aware. And this recording will be up on the police reform website at policereform.ongov.net. So with that being said, I will kick it to Pastor Alex to begin. And let's get it started.
All right. Good evening, everyone. As Stephanie said, this is our opportunity to share regarding our charge, our duty to have conversation throughout our county in regards and in response to Executive Order 203 that our governor submitted and charged all of us in the police departments, municipalities, cities, and county with various duties and functions. Our charge this evening is to share, to have conversation, to hear your thoughts on policing in your area, our area. As I put in the chat, asking it that you would, if you desire, to have remarks and or share, please put your name in the chat and or use the raise hand feature. I will then, in order, call those who have a desire to share. Again, it is an opportunity for you to be a part of what is going to be policing going forward. Our hope, our aspirations for policing for years to come. It is a fluid document that is going to be comprised. It will have opportunity to be reviewed and comments. But tonight, this is your opportunity to share. So put your name in the chat and or the raise your hand feature, and let's get a conversation about policing and police reform started. Okay, so if that's you want to share, put your name in and or raise your hand, and I will start tonight's conversation. We do have representation of policing officers and departments throughout the eastern suburbs of Syracuse, as well as even from the city of Syracuse. The board administrator for the Citizen Review Board is on, of course, Stephanie Martin Tom from the district attorney's office, and myself. So, and I do see that our county executive has joined in. So we're going to give him a moment to come on and he'll greet us and then we'll be ready to begin. So as soon as the county executive is on, he'll share and we'll get ready to get started. So please put your name in the chat and or the raise your hand feature. All right, county executive.
Hi, Pastor. How are you? Good to see you again. And hello, everybody. It's good to be with you tonight. And I want to thank you for your participation. I know many of you have been participating in many of these discussions, and they're important discussions to have overall. And so this process from the county level, I want to thank the district attorney and his team and the mayor and their team, Mayor Walsh, for the work that's been done related to this dialogue between our law enforcement agencies and the community at large. And from these hearings, we will be putting forward a plan, and our legislature, the county legislature, will be voting on that plan at some point. So from these sessions, it's a conversation, a dialogue. Sometimes it's a little uncomfortable for people to talk about it, but that's what we need to do to come together, is to listen to each other and learn from each other, and how can we be better. And at the end of this process, related to policy decisions, the legislature may or may not take up different policy recommendations, but there will be a plan put forward. So again, I want to thank everybody for the work that's been done, the subcommittees that have been working as well, and thank everybody from the public for participating. And I will be sitting here and listening. So thank you for that, Pastor.
All right, thank you, sir.
And I guess I'll begin by giving some background as to why we are here tonight, for some of you who have not been on the first 5 community forums. So we are here because Governor Cuomo issued Executive Order 203, which calls for police reform and reimagining policing within the state of New York. And for each police agency that governs or the state of New York to submit a plan for how they would reinvent their policing, and to have that plan submitted by April 1st of this year, in order to ensure that they continue funding from the state comes to that police agency. And now, in Executive Order 203, it does call for us, as I share a brief presentation, it does call for each plan to have addressed racial bias, disproportionate policing in communities of color, among other things. And each plan has to address 14 areas, which you see here, in order for us to continue to have our police agencies get funding from the state. So we in Onondaga County took a countywide approach to this. We wanted to address a countywide plan that each police agency can adopt the pillars of that plan and include it in whatever form they submit to the state. And that way, policing throughout the county is essentially the same. Therefore, if you go from DeWitt across to Syracuse to the town of Tully, you expect this.
Your mic is off.
So can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So with that being said, we have a website for which if people want to submit their public comments via the website or the email, please do so. But tonight we're here for you to hear from you. And like Pastor Alex said, it's a fluid document. So your comments are integral to that document and the plan that's ultimately created and submitted. So please put your name in the chat and let's get some real good comments going through and real good discussions like we've been having in the past 5 forums. And thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you. All right, and Raynette is going to share this time.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to share. Thank you for the opportunity to attend all of the community forums thus far. I would be remiss if I did not mention, as the administrator for the Citizens Review Board, we oftentimes get calls from many people that live in other areas outside of the city of Syracuse. And they express their concern related to the Sheriff's Department and also other outside agencies when they are interacting with them. So I would be remiss again if I did not mention that the CRB for the city of Syracuse, with the only jurisdiction for the Syracuse Police Department, does receive calls about the sheriff's office and how can I make a complaint against them? How can I make a complaint when I'm in Liverpool, Baldwinsville, DeWitt, and things of that nature? So I really want us to make sure that we include those things when we're thinking about how we reimagine and when we reinvent what policing looks like, that those agencies have been getting complaints to the CRB office, and all I can do is refer them back to the agency and state, please contact their internal affairs department, please contact, their office and make a complaint with them. But I had to make sure that that was advised, that we are receiving those calls from the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Raynette. Again, if you have comments or want to share your experience with policing, again, as I've shared in the previous settings, it's not always about something bad. If you have had a good experience, something that has been consistently the same regarding the agency of your jurisdiction, please share. Let's hear what is going well, what we can enhance, what we can do different so that we can have 21st century policing, community policing at its best. So take the opportunity, become a part of the dialogue, be a part of what is going to be going forward. Your comments, your thoughts, they do matter. So sitting and listening is wonderful, but jumping in and participating is even better. I'll give you a moment and build up your nerve and hit that chat, put your name in, share your experience. I also have the honor, and it is for me an honor and a privilege to serve as one of the commissioners of policing for the town of DeWitt. Being a commissioner for the town of DeWitt police is a unique opportunity in this area, one that is very unique to Central New York. It gives us an opportunity to advise, to guide, even at times to hear complaints and concerns, to give our thoughts and our recommendations. Serving in that capacity, I've had persons to reach out to me directly so that I can pass on information to Chief Baladu and to the other commissioners so that we can bring quick resolution and offer guidance. Being a police commissioner, my children laugh at me sometimes like, hey, Mr. Commissioner, where's your badge? I'm like, no, I'm not that kind of commissioner, but it is an opportunity to serve and to provide information and guidance at times when persons are somewhat can be apprehensive and or unnerving to go and to say, I have a complaint or I need to share something that has not always been in their impression of favorable. So if we have opportunity to serve and opportunity to help, then yes, let's do that. So what we're going to have, there have been some pre-submitted comments that we are going to share that also may elicit some responses. And again, put your name in the chat at any time and I'll gladly call you.
So the first pre-submitted comment that we have is from zip code 13224 from a Mr. Phil Turner. He has a few questions. First, in regards to minority recruitment, what's being done to reshape the image of law enforcement in communities of color, and what initiatives are in place to add color? And I believe that's referring to adding people of color to the police department. Second, there will always be confused, misguided, and angry young people in impoverished communities. The main problem is they have access to guns. What initiative does law enforcement have locally or federally to diminish access to guns? And lastly, we want assurance that every police officer in our community is wearing an active camera when they approach a crime scene. Chief Baladu, I see that you're on the call. Since it came from zip code 13224, if you would like to take this first comment. There may be some technical difficulties with Chief Baladu's mic, so if Chief Kroll would like to take the comment.
Yeah. Once Chief Baladu can chime in, please interrupt me, but all good questions. As far as minority recruitment, all police agencies in Onondaga County have to go through the county personnel civil service process, and they primarily handle recruiting and testing and putting people on these eligible lists that we must pull from. Having said that, I know a number of agencies do their own individual recruiting efforts to include Manlius PD. We do that, and we try to reach out to as many folks as we can in order to strengthen the pool, if you will, of folks that will be asked to take the test, pass the test, and then names that we can draw from this the civil service process. Furthermore, and I don't want to speak for Chief Baladu, but we're both CALIA accredited agencies as well as New York State accreditation, and I believe in both accreditation programs, it requires, well, at least in CALIA, it requires us to do everything we can possibly do to match the number of police officers that's consistent with the makeup of our community, if you will. And I know we both have to and do make a real serious effort towards trying to achieve those goals. Problem is getting folks to take the test, right? So in the past, we've worked with county personnel, and we worked with the City of Syracuse Police Department because we all pull from the same list. And we tried to do a really great effort in trying to recruit minorities so that they could get on the list so that they were reachable through this civil service process. And that's always been, I know in the town of Manlius, we have a recruiting plan, and that recruiting plan includes efforts trying to try to increase the number of folks on those lists and the folks that we can legitimately get to based on the civil service process. As far as access to guns, not sure if I have a lot of information on that. All town and village agencies, as well as City of Syracuse, participate in programs on gun violence and violence reduction throughout the county. It's really a countywide program. We all participate in that. That is one of the programs that we support individually as agencies, and also our Onondaga County Chiefs Association also support gun violence. And that's also one of our partners in that effort and initiative is the District Attorney's Office. So we do a lot of work on that. Cameras, I know that our agency, Town of Manlius, was the first agency in Onondaga County to have body cameras with support from our Town of Manlius government. Very expensive process, but we were the first, and it's proved to be an outstanding program. And again, I don't want to speak for Chief Bilodeau, but I know that as part of this initiative, DeWitt is looking into body worn cameras as well. And Chief Bilodeau, are you connected? Do you want to add to that?
Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. Thanks for stepping in, Chief Kroll, having webcam issues. I missed the initial part of what you were discussing, Chief, because my webcam cut out, but I think you hit a little bit on the recruitment and the minority recruitment hiring. I would add, we participated, I'm fairly sure the Manlius Police Department participated with DCJS in the past couple of years with a voluntary program where we had officers go take sample civil service tests, and they have changed the format and the questions of the initial hire test in order to make it more fair and to minority recruited candidates. So the first time that the new version of the test has been made public is the current list that is out there now. This test that has been changed. So we are hopeful that we are going to see an increase in reachable minority candidates on the civil service list because of this participation with the state and kind of reinventing the way the civil service test is given and the types of questions that are asked to try to make it more fair to all people. I know we have seen an increase in DeWitt with minority candidates, and it has led to, we hired our first minority candidate here in DeWitt just this past year, actually, just an increase in interest from individuals that we have actually seen here. So it's been interesting. I know that that's not necessarily the case across the country, but I am hopeful that the change in the civil service test will lead to more candidates being on the civil service list, and we can maximize that. In regards to body cameras, Chief Cole hit on it. We did implement a body worn camera program this year in DeWitt. We rolled it out on November 1st. So every officer that is on patrol in DeWitt has body cameras through WatchGuard. They are activated during every citizen interaction. Part of that body worn camera policy was developed with part of our commission that was formulated, the police commission, in regards to, we had bought body cameras prior to Executive Order 203 going out, but we formatted the policy with the input from the police commission as part of the executive order. So I know that Manlius has had it for a couple of years. We have already seen in the few months that we have implemented body cameras, it's a phenomenal program. I also am very encouraged all police agencies. I think every one of my officers would agree, and I know the citizens agree that I do not have a negative thing to say about body cameras. I think it's an absolute way of policing going forward, and I think we will see that continue to grow across the country.
And just to add to that, Pastor Alex, I saw your question. And so our recruitment plan, and I'm sure it's similar to DeWitt's recruitment plan, includes not only participating heavily with Onondaga County personnel who really kind of administers that plan, but we try to actively send out flyers, information, recruiting officers to various areas of our community, because we really are interested in recruiting individuals that, you know, match the makeup of our community demographics. So we send out these flyers to libraries, colleges. We participate in job fairs, and we try to get as much information, as well as producing the county personnel's link to our website on job opportunities.
Thank you. I will share as we get ready to move on and bring in other persons. That, again, please put your name in the chat. Don't be shy. Share your thoughts. I've had, and I do appreciate the development of the report and open, authentic conversations that Chief Baladu and I've had, starting, you know, when the murder of George Floyd took place, and we spent time having authentic conversation, so that we could build a level of trust and camaraderie, so that going forward, we could build the town of DeWitt to be just to be a great example of what can happen when the protesters, peaceful protesters, gathered at Shoppingtown and marched through the town of DeWitt all the way downtown to the city of Syracuse. That was quite a walk. I didn't know. It's one thing to ride, it's another thing to make that walk. But when we did that, there were several young men and women that came forward and spoke with and identified and said, what do I need to do to be a town of DeWitt police officer? The conversations were invigorating, and Chief had conversation and gave them the guidance on what they needed to do. In order for a community to change, there's going to have to be conversation. There's going to have to be an effort and intentionality. As I said to the chief, and I had George Floyd's murder not been recorded for the world to see, I don't know if we would be sitting having this conversation tonight. Don't know if we would be having it. But since it has happened, and since this is where we are, then let's do some things. Let's do and make an intentional effort that we start seeing change in our community. I celebrate, yes, that the town of DeWitt is has a young man in the academy and hired its first, you know, that's wonderful. But when you think of the longevity of the town of DeWitt, and that there is now an African-American man that is going to be a town of DeWitt officer, that's a long time. It took a long time. So we have to make sure that we are really doing what we can do to make our community better. So we're going to next hear from Christine Herb, and then we will continue to bring others in. Please put your name in the chat and let's get ready to have conversation. Christine.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I participated in the first community forum and in this one, the last. I am a resident of Manlius. I've lived here for 15 years. I just became awoke to racial injustice, particularly in regards to police treatment of people of color when George Floyd was murdered. And I was horrified. When I attended a rally in the town of Manlius following that, I was further horrified to hear of firsthand accounts from people in my community, people of color who themselves were racially profiled by the police One was a woman, a Black woman who is an SU professor who was here driving around looking at property, homes to buy. And she was pulled over by the Manlius police and questioned what was she doing here. Another, I don't remember what her title is, but her husband, who is Black, was bringing her children home to her. And he was tailed from DeWitt to her home in Manlius. And after he had dropped off the children, who were very traumatized by this experience, knowing that their Black father was being tailed by a police car, and knowing that his safety was actually potentially in danger, that his being was in danger, and maybe them. When he left the mother's home, dropping the children off, he was actually pulled over and harassed by the police. I'm hoping that some of these people are here present in this group tonight and will tell these firsthand stories, but I heard of these stories. Black people who are residents in this community being pulled over by the police and questioned and harassed. I have never been pulled over by the police in the 15 years I have lived here. And I would like to know, I'd like to know how many Manlius police there are, and of that number, how many are not white? Number one. Number two, I would like to know what Manlius police do to educate their white officers on how to be racially just and sensitive and appropriate in the treatment that of the people that they choose to pull over. What education is actually done to that? And furthermore, I don't believe that the police force necessarily has to represent the community that they are policing. Why shouldn't we have more people of color? I mean, just having police of color in our police force, regardless of whether it's the right percentage based on our population here, is just going to make us a better police force. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Chief Crowell, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, of course. I think there's two questions in there, so if I miss something, please let me know. The first one is really not an answer to a question, but it's more of a comment or a statement. So the one story that you heard at that rally, and I was at that rally, by the way, I can tell you it was reported to the Town of Manlius Police Department. The complaint was received through our complaint process. An internal affairs investigation was launched, and the complaint was thoroughly investigated and determined that there was no policy or procedure that was violated by that particular officer. Second comment that's related to that is Town of Manlius Police Department has a very strong policy on bias-based policing and racial profiling. It is strictly prohibited at the TMPD. Part of that is through our accreditation process. We have to have training and policies in place to make sure that that type of behavior does not occur. And because it's strictly prohibited, if it did occur on any occasion, it would be handled in a very severe manner, and discipline would be applied. I think the first question in there was how many Town of Manlius police officers there are. We have a budget support of 38 full-time sworn police officers in the Town of Manlius. Of those 38 sworn individuals, 2 police officers are non-white. I think that was the second part to that question. And as far as why we don't just exclusively try to match our demographics. In fact, we exceed our demographics in the town of Manlius as far as the makeup of our agency. So, but that doesn't stop us from hiring more people that are minority. The recruiting process and the selection process is pretty much controlled through state civil service and or county personnel. And so we have to follow that process, but we still do everything we can possibly do to attract more individuals, take that test, get on the list so that they're reachable. Did I answer all the questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Chief Crowell and Raul, we're going to be calling you next. Just for clarity, did you say that there are 3 minority police officers in the town of Manlius, or 2?
Well, if you're talking minority and you're including females, we have, I think, 6 females. But if you're talking, she said non-white, and the answer to that is 2 non-white.
All right, thank you. Okay, Raul is going to share next.
Hi, how are you? I'm new to the, I'm a new member of the DeWitt Police Commission. However, I was a volunteer in Jefferson County, Washington, out on the peninsula. And we implemented and seriously examined President Obama's 21st century policing reforms, which were really focused on community policing. And I just wonder, since I'm new to this venue, I'm just wondering whether or not those reforms and that whole process has been discussed. The second thing is, I'm a retiree of SUNY Morrisville. I have a lot of my former students that are Marine Corps, people that served in the Marine Corps. There are a number of them. There's a very large veterans network, and a lot of people of color are interested in joining the various police departments, and that might be an excellent way to do that. I have a number of contacts with people that can help, for example, with Latino and Latinx, however you want to put it, and women candidates that have served in the Marine Corps, in combat roles and in combat positions. So those are just sort of my 2 comments. For what it's worth, I thank you. I'm very glad that this is occurring. And I have a very, very favorable opinion of police officers. A number of them have been in my family. And again, I'm from the West Coast. Officers, Latinx police officers have always been part of the police force. And it's just one of those weird things about coming to the right coast. It's not very similar to the left coast. So that's just an observation. Thank you very much. And I look forward to doing whatever I can, both in my town and in the county. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Hope
sir.
you can hear me.
Okay, if any of my police officers and or elected officials can speak to 21st policing in any of those tenets, you can share them at the appropriate time. We're still looking in the chat. So there's so many of us here tonight. I should, let me see. So we are waiting for you. And while you are getting ready to type it in, we're going to have another pre-submitted comment that can continue to foster conversation. Stephanie?
So we have a comment here from a Mr. William Morris, also zip code 13224. Is there any plan for the county to increase mental health responses to certain 911 calls? That's it.
So if you don't mind, Pastor Alex, I can address that. And then if Chief Bilodeau has anything to add, I would welcome that. I'm one of the 5 chairs for the review of Executive Order 203. And I've been tasked specifically with 3 training issues to address. And one is crisis intervention team training efforts throughout the county of Onondaga. In addition to that, Manlius PD and numerous other PDs have engaged in this CIT, crisis intervention training. But in addition to that, and this is a great part of this process, is our group, the group that I was chairing, the subgroup that was talking specifically about crisis intervention team training, that came up as a topic, 911 diversion. And if people are not familiar with the 911 diversion program, it's a very successful program where we teach our 911 dispatchers, call takers, whatever you want to refer to them. We get them trained in either the 40-hour crisis intervention team training or in addition to the 24-hour training, 8-hour training on mental health awareness or mental health first aid. But in addition to that, we are specifically looking and have a meeting next week on Broome County's initiative on 911 diversion. And I'm still learning about it, but we're looking at it very seriously. And that is a process where, if possible, when somebody calls 911 and there is any indication that there might be a mental health crisis occurring, 911 has the ability to determine who gets dispatched. And it could be just the we haven't gone into the COHOS model which is mentioned in last night's Zoom. We're not quite there yet, but certainly they have the ability to divert calls based on the need of that particular call. So I think it's a really good first step in 911 diversion. And during that meeting next week with my subcommittee, we're going to be talking about Broome County's initiative, which it's our understanding has been very successful.
And in addition to that, thanks, Chief, for that. Commissioner Julie Korn certainly will work with this subcommittee. And again, in county government, we're really the point government for human services in general. And so working with other human service partners as well. So we wait for Chief's subcommittee report, but certainly we'll work on best practices within our 911 unit as well.
I just want to add to that, Chief Crow. I think we've all joined in working with Liberty Resources right now, and we're still in the infancy stage. That's a mobile crisis support team that the Sheriff's Department, I think most of the local departments have signed on board with. We've talked to Broome County also and looking at their model, and I think it's something that will definitely be moving forward in the future here.
Yep, Pastor, I think just the one thing to add is I had the privilege of sitting on the Alternatives to Police Response Subcommittee as part of this countywide group, so I can speak directly to some of the recommendations that will come out of that group. One of the main recommendations in regards to this question, the recommendation from that group is to assign, I do not know the name of the committee on the county legislature. I'm going to get it wrong. I'm sorry. But there is a specific committee that sits on the county legislature that deals with mental health and social services. Assign that committee. Our recommendation is to give them the authority to take a further look into what else can be done at the county level to provide a consistent level of service, in addition to the manual, the MOUs that have been signed with Liberty Resources and other things like that, so that there is a consistent level of service being provided, and perhaps looking at, instead of grant funding for those services, are there county monies that can develop a countywide plan? I know that Mary Kuhn, I think she stepped off. She chaired that subcommittee. So that was the goal, at least our recommendation on that subcommittee. I can speak quickly to Raul's question as well, if you'd like, in regards to the 21st century policing. We, as part of being CLIA accredited, both DeWitt and Manlius police departments, we have a few luxuries in place where there are certain things that we already meet the standards for, and those are continual reviews that happen. I'm going to take it up to the more recent of the executive orders and the presidential commissions. the presidential executive order on June of 2020. I'm gonna cheat on my sheet here so I get the numbers wrong, but Executive Order 13929 said that the U.S. Department of Justice discretionary grant funding is only available to state and local municipalities that meet certain credentials on use of force and different things like that. So as part of our CALIA accreditation process, we had CALIA certify us. They reviewed over 30 of our policies, and that we do meet the minimum standards for the presidential executive orders in order to get discretionary grant funding. I will make that part of the DeWitt's more specific plan. I didn't want to take up too much time because it doesn't apply to the county plan necessarily, but since Rule specifically asked, we do make a point, obviously, and most of the time having that additional international accreditation really helps us in exceeding the standards that are set forth at the national level.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that information. Okay, we have Raynette is going to share some information or a comment. Raynette?
Hi, again. So I used to work for O'Hara, O'Connell, and Ciatoli in Fayetteville. And on several occasions, just driving from work, I was pulled over by the same officer in the same area twice. I was able to write this really nice letter to the judge in which it allowed me to get those violations dropped. But I just wanted to add to Christine's statements that she made about how real it is. And, you know, I traveled there every day to go to work, you know, in my nice business suit and my nice little Ford Focus ZX3. And I actually used I used cruising control to make sure that I was not speeding as I was traveling in order to avoid situations that had occurred. But I still was pulled over 2 times by the same officer in the exact same area every day as I was leaving from work. So I just wanted to just echo what Christine has said and, you know, let you know that's, you know, not that I thought that you may have considered it to not be real, but here is also a person who has experienced it firsthand traveling through there, you know, making sure. I do that same thing in Liverpool though. I put the speed, I use cruise control, and as I'm traveling through the village, I make sure that I stay right where the legal limit is so that I make sure that I'm not getting pulled over. And also the checkpoints that they can like miraculously have on the parkway. Like you could go through there 5 minutes and the next thing you know, there's like a checkpoint. It's like speedy. I don't know how you get it up that fast, but I wanted to just make sure that I mentioned it, that I, you know, I do travel, you know, outside of the city of Syracuse, and I do see those type of events that are happening. I think it's usually during DWI, you know, during the holidays and things of that nature, but they can put those roadblocks up really quickly. So just wanted to mention that as well.
Thank you. We have another comment that is going to be shared from from Stephanie. Again, everyone, please put your name in the chat. Let's keep the conversation going. I do appreciate those of you who have, but there's so many of you who have not. Let's hear from you tonight. Okay, Stephanie?
So this comment is coming from a Mr. Joseph Bennett. It's coming from actually area code 13207, but it is more for the Sheriff's Department. So I believe this is for you, Chief Ciccarelli. What plans does the county have to reform the Sheriff's Department? And what resources will be provided or moved to more non-punitive measures for stopping crime?
Well, I'm a little confused with the question in regards to other ways we could be stopping crime. I mean, we look at numbers based on information that's given to us by call volumes, by specific areas. We try to minimize the need for, we talked about this last night, Chief Buckner talked about this, the need for overall crime suppression. We try to minimize that effect and use our resources as minimal as possible to affect, I would say, anti-crime measures for the small amount of individuals that we're dealing with. This whole forum here is designed so that we can look at different ways of doing things and try to become better at what we're doing and be more, I like, customer service friendly, understand where we're sitting with the community, understand the issues at hand, and again, just keep on moving forward with this thing that we're dealing with here.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chief. Again, this is your opportunity to be a part of history. I think it is, and yes, history. To be a part of a document, part of a conversation that is going to advance what policing is going to look like in Central New York is a historical move. It is innovative. It is a challenge, and I do understand that. However, to not share and or to not be a part of it is something that I don't think you should let pass by. Please share your thoughts. And we're going to be calling up someone in a moment, but I will share that as an African-American man living in the town of DeWitt, and when I speak to my friends, colleagues that live in DeWitt and or, Manlius and Fayetteville, Janesville, the conversations that they have had with their sons are not the conversation that I've had with my son. I've had to have the conversation with my son of what to do if he's pulled over by the police. I've had to have the conversation with him of, son, I want you to come home. I want you to come home, or I want you to be safe, and I want you to be well. I've had that with my daughters. I've had with my daughters the conversation that if you're pulled over and you are not comfortable where you're pulled over, you keep driving until you get to Wegmans. If you have to drive into the lobby of Wegmans, you do it. I'll deal with whatever we have to deal with, because I'm just keeping it real. I want my son, I want my daughters to come home. I want them to come home because there have been instances, and we all know of them, when those things have just happened. I've had the conversation with my son. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. Don't make any sudden moves. Yes, sir. No, ma'am. Whatever they ask you, comply, 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 comply. Don't argue. Don't talk back. Don't go reach for your phone. Just be still. If you call me, I'm on my way. Don't say, my dad is coming. These are very real conversations that as an African-American father, I've had with my son. Well, it's the reality of the times in which we live. I celebrate what is going on, but in the same time, I'm also a realist, and I'm an eternal optimist. We're getting better, and it's conversations like this that are going to help us be better. So please put your name in the chat, share your thoughts, and we're going to next hear from Barry Gawanter. Please put your name in while she's sharing.
Good evening. It's interesting, Pastor. My parents didn't teach me that. They didn't feel it was necessary. That in itself was a privilege. I can't imagine what it's like to be a parent and having to have that conversation. It must be surreal. My first comment from tonight is actually a suggestion. In police parlance, when they have a call where they're asked to respond to somebody who is in a mental health crisis, they use a police acronym. It's referred to as an EDP call. That stands for emotionally disturbed person. That terminology basically says this person has a defect. They're not a person, they're an EDP. It dehumanizes them, and it is a model of thinking that I don't think is really appropriate. I would suggest, and I have suggested recently to key people, that we change that terminology in Onondaga County. Instead of calling it an EDP call, call it an MHC call. mental health crisis call, because words shape our thinking. And I don't want people to think about somebody who is suffering with the challenges of mental health issues to be thought of as defective or disturbed. They're having a moment when they're not healthy. I also want to acknowledge that these are the most dangerous kinds of calls for police officers. And police officers know that when they go to such a call. When a police officer goes to a call, there are certain priorities, certain protocols they follow. And because some calls can be dangerous, the very first thing they're going to do is they're going to assess scene safety. They're going to look for weapons. They're going to find out if it's aggressive. And one of the things that happens is people want to talk to the officer they call. People want to tell their story, and they are often put off by the idea that the officer puts them off until he's assessed the safety at the scene. When people begin to understand why officers do what they do and that there's a legitimate reason for it, people may react less negatively to the officer's initial presentation. I think it's really important that we teach the public a little bit more about why officers do what they do to avoid misunderstandings and to increase understanding. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that a lot of smaller suburban departments do not have internal affairs departments. So you have a complaint about a suburban department and you ask, I want to speak to IA. There is no IA. And without an internal affairs department, a lot of people don't know how to make a complaint. Now, I know that you either ask for the commander on shift or you go directly to the chief, but that's not patently obvious. I think it's important that suburban departments make it clear that there is a pathway for complaint and it will be addressed and it will be investigated. And that leads me to my final comment for tonight, which is, I understand that one of the recommendations coming out of this consortium may be to implement right to know laws in suburban departments. This is the law that was passed in the city of Syracuse that's only binding on Syracuse police officers. But I'd like to know, what is the current willingness around suburban police departments in Onondaga County to implement a version of that right to know law, so that people who are traveling into suburbs, including and especially people of color, know that if they are stopped, they have the right to know why they're stopped, that they won't be left in the dark, and that they have the right to find out how, if they wish to make a complaint. I'd love to know from some of the suburban chiefs, what's the feeling on implementing the right to know law in your departments, in your municipalities? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, sir, I can talk real quick to that. So we had this exact discussion as part of our police commission meeting with the town of DeWitt specifically. Right to know was a subject that was brought up. We don't call it right to know, but just because it's different verbiage. But we amended our employee identification procedure policy. It was part of the discussion, and it will be part of our specific plan, so that our officers do in fact hand business cards out to every citizen that they have an interaction with. And on that business card, obviously, is the officer's name, is the DeWitt Police website. And on the DeWitt Police website, there is a tab right there for complaints. It's very clear. And that tab will take them to a form that clearly spells out how to make a complaint and the different ways in which it will be handled: email, phone, in-person, mail, all of those things. So we don't call it right to know, but I think that we were certainly amendable to making the right changes that made sense for the way that we do business here in the town of DeWitt. And it was a good discussion, and I think we came to an agreeable solution that works out for all the parties. And we're going to continue to monitor it going forward, make sure it's working, and then make changes as we go.
Also, additionally, Pastor, I'll add to that. So there's some things that probably the public needs to know, and I couldn't agree more. A lot of this is a communication issue. A lot of it is people just don't know why the police do what they do. So I agree with Barry on that. But as it's specifically related to right to know, there's also a thing called levels of DeBoer in the state of New York, and it's only applicable to police officers in the state of New York. And the law is very, very clear, and it comes from the highest court in the state of New York on when police can approach individuals on the street, on the sidewalk, and it can also be applied to driving, because I know we stop a lot of cars because we're real sensitive about safety, automobile safety in our area. So our officers really, and my officers, and I'm sure Chief Bilodeau can speak to this, as well as Chief Cicerelli from the Sheriff's Department, they all are intimately familiar with DeBoer and where they are in those levels and what they can do in those levels. And that's really related to this right to know issue, because the reality is that in New York State, if you stop somebody in levels 1 and 2, for instance, of DeBoer, they don't have to answer your questions. That's the law in the state of New York. So these laws are already implemented in place, and I know, and I'm certain Chief Bilodeau could agree to this, as well as Chief Cicerelli, is our officers know the Fourth Amendment probably better than anybody around, and they know exactly when they can search somebody, when they cannot search somebody. It's all related to decisions that are born out of New York Court of Appeals, as well as Supreme Court decisions, all on Fourth Amendment. So this idea that, officers are just, out there sort of violating the law, I guess it's possible, and we would need to address that immediately. But some of these things also are very much related. And lastly, but related to the right to know issue, is we teach a thing called verbal judo, which is also referred to as tactical communications. And one things that we teach specifically to traffic stops is what we call the 6-step process. And when we stop a car, our officers are trained to identify themselves as a police officer in the town of Manlius. Sometimes they use their rank, sometimes they don't. But secondly to that, they immediately tell the motorist why they're stopped. And what that does, according to the verbal judo rules and guidelines in our training, is it gives them those things right up front. Who the officer is, why they got stopped, and we found that by training our officers in that capacity, it removes a lot of the conflict that almost initially is born from a traffic stop, because traffic stops are stressful. I've been a policeman for 32 years, and when there's a police car rolling behind me, I get nervous, right? So we understand that, and so a lot of these things are being implemented without having to really initiate a local law. And you're right, the right to know local law is specific to the city of Syracuse. So if our community members thought that it would be important to initiate a local law and right to know, just like Executive McMahon mentioned in, I think, our first Zoom meeting, they would address that as the legislative body.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, we do have another comment coming in from pre-submitted that Stephanie is going to share. Stephanie?
So I have a comment from the National Action Network, Syracuse chapter, which I do believe pertains to our entire county. The first comment that I'm going to read from them is regarding school safety and SRO officers. Policing in schools disproportionately targets Black and Latino students and engaging in needlessly punitive or aggressive behavior. The comment they have is that they can patrol the campuses, have a security, quote, trailer at the entrance of school for safety checks, and respond inside if the principal calls for assistance. The next comment they have is that police agents, or we and the county, should invest in youth programs already on the ground, doing the work that GLYF, Street Addiction, Urban Delights, Youth Program, SNUG, Team Angel, and Let Me Be Great 44, of developing young people to be great, work with the recently unincarcerated or the re-entry population, and invest more in SNUG's interrupters and credible messengers on our streets to divert youth from the justice system. Can any of our officers speak as it pertains to SROs in our schools, as well as other youth programs that we have in the county?
I can speak to that briefly, Pastor, if that's okay. So the town of Manlius, we have 5 full-time school information resource officers. 2 are assigned to East Syracuse Middle School District, and 3 full-time police officers are assigned to the FM school district. In addition to that, we recently hired 2 special police officers that are special patrol officers that are both currently assigned to FM. The reason why we did that was because the parents, the teachers and the school body needed and wanted and requested more police in the school. So we're just following the guidelines and the guidance and the advice of our community members. And we try to do that always, right? And second part on school information resource officers, and I can't speak to other jurisdictions, but I can tell you that the contracts that we have with these school districts in the town of Manlius, our school information resource officers are forbidden from being involved in any type of disciplinary matters in those particular schools. So they're not there as disciplinarians or for law enforcement purposes. They're there for building relationships and providing training and guidance to the students and the school districts have demonstrated that need. And then I'm not familiar with some of those youth programs, but a lot of the youth programs that we engage in are county initiatives through the district attorney's office, through county probation. And we have a number of what we call referral programs when it comes to youth. And we try to take advantage to those every year. We do an annual report on how often we have utilized those services. And especially with Raise the Age most recently, they've been highly successful, and we'll continue to do that because we've seen great successes in those areas.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, Chief Baladu, did you want to speak to the SRO question with JD?
Yep, I think obviously we're in a little bit of a different boat than Manlius, so I'll just speak specifically so the people here know what the situation is in DeWitt. In DeWitt, we have 1 school resource officer at the Janesville DeWitt High School. Similarly to about the same time when Executive Order 203 came out, our officer had been in place since 2018. The school board had decided they wanted to take another look at the position. They formed a 43-person panel made up of teachers, staff members, community members, parents, students. They are currently in the process of taking a look at the school resource officer position at the Janesville School District. I have been supportive of the position. I continue to be supportive of the position. Since being there in the 2 years, we have not received a single complaint in regards to the activities of the officer, and I can list a number of individuals that I know for a fact she has helped individuals, both white and black, who are victims of crimes, whether they happened in the school or not in the school. And the school resource officer has been able to assist them and get them victim services. So I absolutely believe in the benefit of the position. However, I do believe it is not my choice. It is up to the school district. This 43-person panel does not, I am not on it. I have told them I will support them in any manner that they choose. If they want to keep the position, I absolutely will. If they want to change the position, I've been very open with what I think we're able to do and amend the position. Like Chief Kroll said, there is the SRO position as part of the contract with the school has 0 involvement in discipline matters. That is not the reason the school resource officer is in the school. They're to provide safety and they're to provide counseling and guidance if that's what the school wants. But we will work with the school district and continue to do so with what the school district and the community wants with JD. They will be making their recommendations shortly to the school board, and we'll actually know more what the school district, how they want to proceed with that position.
Thank you. Okay, next we're going to hear from Rebirth Hassan.
Good evening, everybody. The question, or actually the comment and the question that I would like to say that there's a strained relationship between law enforcement and the community, and every community actually in Onondaga County, and especially the inner city and people who live in the city that travel out to the outskirts of Camillus, Manlius, Liverpool, or wherever else. What are the law enforcement in those communities doing to try to reconnect or try to mend that relationship that's been broken between the community and law enforcement, because actually there's no trust and there's a lack of integrity in law enforcement. That's my question and comment.
Okay, thank you. If anyone would like to offer your input on how the police departments, agencies, excuse me, are building rapport with the community.
Yeah, sir, I'll speak to it a little bit. I'm sorry, Chief, I didn't mean to step on you. I'll talk real quick. I think part of this process has been to come up with solutions to that exact question, right? That is really what this process has been. What are the things we are doing wrong? What are the things we can do better? What are the things that we're not sharing enough with the community? We've come up with a number of ideas in regards to more transparency with the information that we share with the community, more policies and procedures that have been placed on our website, so there's more understanding about the way that we do things. The implementation of body cameras is a huge thing, obviously. The reporting back on internal affairs complaints. I know one of the things we have changed as part of the response to Executive Order 203, our town police commission has a referendum that now requires me to report back to them on every single complaint that is made to the police department. That's presented to a panel of 15 citizens now. It's not a citizens review board. It's not the same thing, but it provides more transparency. It gives 15 citizens in the community the opportunity to give me feedback towards how they thought the complaint was received, was it handled properly, and more openness to them, for them to be advocates within the community to explain the policies and procedures that DeWitt is doing. So I definitely think we have to be more proactive about putting information out there so that individuals have an understanding about the things that we are in fact doing. So that's what we've done.
I don't think my question was kind of answered, because my question was, what are you guys doing to mend the relationships? Because to me, kind of, you can't mend a relationship between some people, between somebody that you're not around. You understand? So if you're not like actively getting training with Black people, Black and brown people, then you won't know how to interact with those people, or you won't know how to train those people. So that's what I'm saying. What are the law enforcement departments doing to better the relationship between community and law enforcement?
Mike, I just to answer that, one of the things that we've done, we've had several trainings here, racial injustice training. We've had people come in. We've implemented a yearly training in regards to this. But the other thing it's these meetings are very beneficial, because this is something that's happening before something happens. We've opened up hopefully a line of communication. I've taken some names down, people that I'd like to talk to further. This is the only way that I see us making any changes, which is we have to talk at this level before something happens, so we both understand where each other's coming from. Us in law enforcement need to understand the minority community's views, and you have to understand our views. And hopefully we come up with a middle ground that we all can live with. But I think this forum has definitely opened up. It's opened up a lot of things for me in regards to just having open discussions. And maybe this is something that we need to do more often than not, is to set something up like this so that we're not in an antagonistic way. We're in a more more social way. And maybe at some point in time when COVID's over, we can actually meet in person and open up lines of communications that I think will be beneficial down the road.
Pastor, just to add to that, so now you've heard from DeWitt Police, Onondaga County Sheriff's Department, now Manlius PD, and a big part of this is this communication, which is so critical. But another concept that people have been tossing around, and we've done some training on, and we continue to do some training on in the town of Manlius, is the concept of procedural justice. And a lot of people don't really understand what that means, but the way we teach it and we understand it is that when you have interaction with any elements of either demographically matched individuals in the town of Manlius or anybody that happens to float through our town that have contact with the police, we teach our people to make sure that following that contact, was the person treated with respect? Was the person treated fairly? Were they given a voice in whatever, if it's possibly an enforcement issue, or if it's traffic or otherwise, and were they treated fairly? So those are the 3 or 4 main elements of the concept of procedural justice. If you break it down, it's really what good police departments have been doing for years, but we further define it, and we're able to put a label on it. And I think that is super important to the conversation. And I think it reinforces this idea of us trying to get better at what we do.
Great, thank you. I also would like to share, prior to COVID, and Chief Balladue, you can help me with this. One of the commissioners on the town, our police commission, is a resident in Springfield Gardens. And there was an opportunity, I'm not sure what it was, but she invited the police to come. They came, it was a cookout. They got to meet the kids. They just engaged with them, in a non-enforcement way, building relationship. I think that is it's a necessary to build community with the children, with adults, with persons, as you said, in forums like this, having conversations, and it works. It does make a difference when you have opportunity to interact and to know people, get to know the persons that are serving and protecting your community. As I tell people all the time, the police want to go home to their family, just like you want to get home. They wanted, they're doing their job and they want to go home. They want to enjoy their lives and their families. So let's make a better community by coming together and having conversations so that everyone is getting what they need out of it. So Chief, if you could, a little bit of that, give some context, if you could, to what I was talking about.
Yeah, sure. Obviously this year's a little different, but on any given year, we do approximately 40 details like the ones you mentioned there, Pastor, where we will go to communities or we will go to organizational levels and try to meet with individuals in a non-enforcement manner, right? Just a get to know you type, whether you call it coffee with a cop or whatever you want to call it. We try to do those things within our community. I think what I'm hearing, it's not always necessarily as productive perhaps as like this conversation though. Certainly I think that the ones in Springfield Garden was very productive. And I want to continue to do those and have those positive face-to-face meetings with people. But I like the idea that Chief Cicerelli said that these conversations need to continue, and finding a format where it's more than just coffee with a cop. It's let's sit down and talk about what we're not doing well. What could we be doing better? You have to have both of those things. You have to have the community meetings so that we know each other and we feel comfortable and build relationships with each other so we can communicate. And then you have to have the meetings where, because we built that relationship and we know each other, we can feel comfortable enough to speak honestly with one another about what's not working, and have those guided conversations. So I like the idea that Chief Cicerelli said that finding some sort of manner to continue in this format maybe is the best way to do it, but continue these conversations. But we absolutely love doing community policing details. We will continue to do those. But we have to have conversations that are more than that too.
Great, thank you. It is a necessary, and I do hope that this is the beginning of something that continues to happen, to continue to build and grow our community to be that much better. Okay. All right, Robin is going to share at this time. Okay, Robin.
Hi, my name is Dr. Robin Dean. I'm one of the psychologists. I'm a licensed psychologist working at Hutchings in the Child Unit. And my comment is basically, I feel like there are police in a lot of areas where there shouldn't be police. this notion of the SROs and that the police involvement is based on kind of additional security and mentorship. Shouldn't that mentorship be coming from other areas related to education, social workers, more counselors for schools? I work with a lot of kids in the Syracuse community, and one of the things that is a consistent issue is that there isn't any like in-home or crisis response for child mental health. You know, I have families that are in positions where, you know, children are really struggling and they need assistance with going to the hospital, and the only option is to call 911. And that really shouldn't be the only option for when there's a kid struggling with mental health issues. And I recognize that there are some alternatives for the adult population, but related to kids, they're really zero. And I think that in a lot of ways, there should be a lot more investment in preventing these issues that police are currently being used to solve, like crime related to, you know, like poverty and overpopulation. What are we doing to address those things so that there isn't the need for such a strong police presence in a lot of these Black and brown communities?
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, if I could just touch base on that, and those are all points. And we've actually, in county government, we actually have hundreds of our mental health and social workers in the schools, in various districts throughout the community, centered around the city school district. And we agree with you. When you have those professionals in the schools, what we've seen is in the city school district, we attribute a lot of the uptick in graduation rates to the fact that we can get the mental health services and social services to the kids in the buildings. I can't speak specifically to the officers in the schools, but what we do, that is a model that we're very happy with and we're very comfortable with. And we've expanded it, not just in the city school district, but into our inner ring suburbs, many of them, and some of our rural communities as well. And it's something that we will continue to do because we see the results in graduation rates. And when we can graduate more kids, those are kids that will go on and they'll be employable. And that is really one of the keys of our poverty platform. But in county government, we invest in almost every human service agency in the county in one way or the other as a partner. And we're really trying. The pandemic has hurt us. It's pushed us back in many ways with our kids because many of our kids aren't in school every day. So it's difficult to really understand what this past year, what the damage has been to our young people because of this. But from the standpoint of investing into these services, getting them to our young people, we're doing it. We have a model that has worked. We're trying to expand it. The pandemic has certainly halted some of our momentum.
Thank you, County Executive. Appreciate that information. Okay, we do have a follow-up that Stephanie is going to share. Stephanie?
Thank you, Pastor. So this follow-up is from a Mr. Robert Brownell. Chief Belledew, you brought up body-worn camera and that your agency will be implementing it. It is also something that we talked about in the community forums in passing. So the question and comment is, in regards to body-worn camera, can they shut them off when they want? Can the police union get access to them before the public gets to see them? Where is the video stored? What's the penalty for officers not turning them on or turning them off in the middle of an encounter?
I tried to write them down, but you talked too fast for me, Stephanie. So if I miss one, you tell me. We have implemented body-worn cameras, and we're not going to be. We have implemented them. They went into effect November 1st of this year, just to be clear. We do have a body-worn camera policy, which explains some of those questions, and it is part of our plan to 203, and that will be put on our website. So if individuals have questions, they can read our entire policy, which explains a lot of these questions, but I'll try to answer them here as well. they do have the ability to turn them on and off. We do not have our officers wear them for their entire 8-hour shift. The main reason for that is financial. Data storage for these things is phenomenal. We've invested close to $20,000 annually just for data storage. So we do try to find a happy medium between recording incidents that need to be recorded, but not recording unnecessary time of the day. On an average 8-hour shift, the officer will have 2 to 3 hours of citizen interaction as the average recorded time. We do have pre-record on our cameras. So if the officer doesn't turn it on right away, there's 30 seconds of pre-recorded video. With the WatchGuard V300s, the cameras we have, it's a little bit of a unique thing. They do, I'm probably gonna get the technical information wrong, but I'll try to explain the best I can. They have a 48-hour pre-record. So if we had an incident that was critical and the officer failed to turn the camera on, we have at least 48 hours to go back and grab that video, even though it's not on. So there is some safety mechanisms built in there. If the officer failed to turn the video on and it was deemed that it was intentional or a violation of policy that was done on purpose, it would fall into our discipline process, which is also part of our plan. You can read our full disciplinary process. They're union employees and they have union rights, so that'll come into play. I have found in the few months that we have implemented it, we don't have any cases of that I haven't even been aware of yet. The officers want to turn the video on. The officers want this video as much as the public does. It has not been a culture issue here where officers are not turning their cameras on. We have an in-house server is what we chose to do. I know some agencies do cloud service, some agencies do in-house or on-site service. It was strictly financial for us. We purchased a server and the video was stored on our server at the Town of DeWitt Police Department. I think there was a question in regards to review. That's built into our policy. The officers have the ability to review the footage before writing a police report. And if the public wanted to view it, it would depend on the scenario, whether it was a FOIA request, whether it got put forth as part of the discovery process, if there was a criminal arrest. There's a number of different ways in which the public would have the access to view the video.
And Chief, just to do a follow-up on that, I do know in some of our past forums, there was question as to whether the video can be altered in any way. Is that possible? Can the video be altered by those who view it before us?
No, so we do not have any editing capabilities in the video, and the officers do not. They simply can turn the device on. When they come back to the station, they dock the device and the video gets uploaded into the server. There's all sorts of tracking mechanisms built in with metadata built into this stuff that's well above my level, but there is no ability to edit or manipulate the video. It is all tracked on a record, and if we had to do a full investigation, we would have some forensic experts come in and show how all that is tracked and all those things, but there is no editing capability. The officers can only view their video. They cannot edit or change it.
Thank you.
All right, one moment. And there's a question asking departments, what are your thoughts on clean reporting as it relates to viewing body-worn cameras prior to writing reports?
We went both, there's a lot of different discussion depending on who you talk to with that, Renette. We have, we entertain this idea. Should we have them write the reports first and then view the video? Should they be allowed to view the video? We went back and forth with the commission, with the union, with different entities when we were writing our body-worn camera policy. My thought process on it is that the video is what occurred. So allowing the officers to see what actually occurred when they write their report. If our goal is to get to the truth, then I think that's what would happen. I think the union was certainly in favor of giving the officers the ability to review it prior to writing their reports, and that factored into our decision as well. So I know that human memory is not perfect. We've seen that without a doubt, right? So on your average case, viewing the video can help the officer write a more thorough and detailed report. So in our policy, the officers are allowed to write or review their video prior to writing a police report in an effort to just have the report be as accurate as possible.
Okay, and our last question is a pre-submitted, and Stephanie is going to share that. Stephanie?
This comes from a Mr. George M. Jones, zip code 13039, the Cicero area, but it goes for all police agencies. Comment, I have had good and bad experiences with the police. It seems that it depends on what mood they are in on the given day. Question, what kind of mental health support are police given?
Pastor, I can try to take a shot at that. So police officers are human. And they have good days and bad days. Now, when we teach our tactical communication and our verbal judo, we say, as a police officer wearing a uniform, you can't have a bad day, but we know that's not the reality, right? So as far as mental health, I know that based on Executive Order 203 and our process, and through some work that was done in the Town of Manlius Public Safety Advisory Committee, they put a strong emphasis on the mental health and well-being of the officer because we can't have a bad day. So many agencies, and I can really only speak to the Town of Manlius, but our township offers for all of our employees, including police employees, EAP, where they can call up and confidentially talk to counselors, doctors, psychologists, whoever they may need in support of their mental wellness. In addition to that, we work with the New York State Police and their EAP program where they can, again, confidentially reach out to well-trained police officers on mental health, wellness, and concerns. And then lastly, a third element is we have an internal sort of a EAP or officer wellness program where if they're feeling like they're having some issues, just like any other human being in life that we all deal with, there are multiple opportunities for them to reach out. And one of the strong initiatives for New York State Police Chiefs Association that I'm a member of, and so is Chief Bilodeau and many others, is this overall officer wellness initiative statewide. So we're aware of it. We're aware of the concerns. We know we can't have a bad day even though you think you may be having a bad day, and we're doing everything we can to try to prepare for it. But again, we're all humans, so hopefully that addresses the question.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if I could just take a few seconds and Chief Cicerelli as well as Crowl, if you could share your thoughts on clean reporting very briefly, and then we'll wrap up.
I would basically agree with what Chief Bilodeau was talking about. We are in the midst of trying to start a body cam program, and I personally don't see an issue. The issue of reviewing the footage prior to writing the report, but that would be something that we would probably discuss with the district attorney's office and to see where we're at and what would be if there are any legal issues in regards to that. If not, I don't think we have a problem with that.
And Pastor, just to add to that, very much like Chief Bilodeau mentioned, this is an incredibly complex question that we're not going to be able to address in during this 1 hour and a half. I've been following this since day one because we were the first to have body cameras, and experts in this country are still debating with this issue. And a lot of it is related to what Chief Bilodeau said, is that the camera doesn't capture things like the human eye does, and the camera is not influenced by other both objective and subjective factors that need to be considered as it's related to Graham versus Connor, which is the standard for the country on use of force issues, right? So the only thing I can tell you is that, just like what Chief Bilodeau said, I couldn't say it and agree more, is we're just simply in search of the truth. And how we get there is based on best practices. Best practices right now is still being debated by people that are much smarter than myself. But I can tell you that if there is a final product that comes out in best practices and it's agreed upon by our own district attorneys, our own review process, and other elements associated with this complex issue, I know that every agency in this county would follow those best practices.
Great. Well, it has been a great evening. I sincerely appreciate everyone, your input. Thank you, officers. Thank you, of course, Stephanie, County Exec, all of you. Your comments, your input has helped us again to do what we're charged to do. So with that, I say thank you. Have a wonderful evening. And remember, Onondaga County, we are strong. We're going to get it right. Thank you. Additionally, the chat will be open for a few minutes after we sign off, or you sign off, for comments and or you want to add something in. Thank you again.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you, Pastor.
Welcome. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Really
Thank you,
appreciate your help.
everyone. Really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.